Hello everybody, welcome back to our workshops on the Bach cello suite on Adagio Live. I'm Jean-Guihen Queyras. Today, the Gigue from the fourth suite. I have some bad news and some good news. The bad news is that today there is no guest. You know that in the past, each episode we had a guest to give perspective to the cello suite. Well, I'll be honest with you. At first, it was not a programmatic idea not to have a guest today, but I am in discussions with several wonderful, amazing colleagues, personalities. Somehow, in German, they have this expression, the worm was in the fruit from the start, and I couldn't secure somebody for today. So I'm going to be all by myself. The good news is that thanks to that, this episode is going to be a shorter one, and which is also good because looking ahead, after we finish this fourth suite, we are going to plunge into the fifth suite and then into the sixth suite from the next episode. And as you well know, the fifth and the sixth suite are getting more and more dense. There is dense, D-E-N-S-E. There is more and more material. It's getting thicker. And so knowing myself, I know that I'm going to want to plunge into the extraordinary details we have there in these pieces, so that we will have episodes which will be quite full and quite long. As it became clear to me that I was going to be home alone today with you, I thought, why not use this opportunity to look back. This is now our 24th episode. I myself was a bit shocked to realize that 24 episodes and 23 amazing guests. And so I looked a bit back. I didn't watch the last 23 episodes, but I sort of read through the list again of who came to this workshop and who gave us some insight, and I, for myself, and I want to share that with you, I tried to for each of these guests to remember and to summarize for myself, what did this musician, this writer, this choreographer, what did they bring us, what did they give us in terms of perspective towards our wonderful cello suites. And I want to share that with you, to go through this list and see what we could learn in the best sense from all these amazing people. We'll do this right after we talk about our Gigue from the fourth suite, which will not take a very long time. This Gigue is quite short, it's quite straightforward, quite simple, as we have seen now also in the past suite. The last two movements are more about energy, more about dancing, than the philosophical preludes, allemands, sarabands, and therefore there is not a whole lot of harmonic events happening that would justify that we spend a lot of time. But nevertheless, let's have a look at it. So here's so our main motive, 2 bars, very active bass line, so that we are immediately in the movement, in the dance, and something that as you can see, it's very much turning around itself. So around this. So it gives when something is like this, you know, like a ritournelle, you know, turning around itself like this. It immediately gives this feeling of energy and that is sort of bursting out of the music. And then we go on. The repetition, which, by the way, can be an opportunity to do some echo when you want, not all the time, but again. So as you see, twice a motif that is repeated, one bar repeated, one bar repeated, and it's a similar motif where there is a development by the interval. So here I have a fourth, and then a sixth. So that it's an opening a little bit, and then we are already at the end of our first part. We do a little ascending line of the bass with an upper voice that stays stays stuck on a little motif. And that was it with our first part. So very, very simple. A little tip in terms of bowing in this motif. Very often my students come to me and either they play 3 and 3 or they play 1 plus 2 but on every beat. Well, I would strongly recommend that if these two voices, the lower one and the upper one, are not knitted in the same way, don't play the same bowing. It's going to be counterproductive. Also, you want them not only to have a different bowing, obviously, but also a different type of sound and a different kind of musical input. So the lower one in this case is the active one. That's the one that I would say makes the musical line by this ascending line, and the other one is just playing around. Basically, it's doing you know, like here I am, and I stay there, and I stay, you know, and lastly, to finish on this point about the bowing, is that here we have one note which is ornamented. So it is in a way one note, it's one gesture, so it makes sense to do it in one go. And the other one is obviously, actually in a way, not only one voice, it's two voices. So the upper voice and a middle voice which is ornamented. So if you do this differentiation in the bowing between the strong beats 1 and 3 and the weak beats 2 and 4, that will help to create the polyphony, you know, the different voices, this orchestral playing that we have been looking for through our 23 episodes so far. Still about this thing in playing orchestral, playing different voices. When you are in the two final bars with the final cadence, so you have obviously a voice, a very active bass line that goes very energetic bass line, and again one voice that stays stuck. So, and what you don't want is to have them played, the sound produced exactly in the same way. You want to differentiate them so that even though you are by yourself, you want to give the illusion to the people that there are a lot of instruments playing and exchanging with each other. And the way to do this is that when you are on the voice which is on the G string, be quite focused in the sound, and the E flat should just be like a resonating kind of sound. And that will give this very lively feeling. Where as opposed to if I was trying, if I play too much the same way, the different voices. I hope I made my point as clearly as possible. Let's go on to the second part. You remember Bach a lot of time does this. We have our main theme, but this time on the dominant. And then a descending line on one chord. Repetition. And now a sequence. I don't need to explain anymore what it is. That means with a certain motive, Bach is going to go down in a scale over 4 bars. Still, as you can hear, these two different voices. And we have reached C minor. I think here, remember we say these two last movements, the bourrées that we did last time and this Gigue are some of the, probably in the sixth suite, two of the most challenging movements technically. They need a lot of agility and they are tiring because of these extension things. And it was very reassuring. You remember when we talked about it with Nicolas Alstedt, who is probably one of the most agile cellists on the planet at the moment. Even he said that when he never had usually to warm up or to do special things, but when he was playing the fourth suite, he really had to prepare himself because this is so. And this is one of the passages that is known among cellists to be very technically challenging. With you will see a lot of extension. I will play it once a bit slower and shifts. So here we have an extension, shift, and strange change of string. So what I recommend, on top of always making sure that you are not tense, that you are as loose as possible while doing all this, is also that you, when you play in the context of the concert, don't start being like a race driver who just goes through this that just goes through this passage a bit like the Titanic in between the icebergs. Focus on the patterns and on these sequence feelings, meaning so what does it mean exactly? It means ease towards the middle of the bar. And yes, even though it seems almost impossible in the speed of this Gigue, after this middle of the bar, after this lowest note, take a little time and then go on. I greatly exaggerate now. And then you will be able to really. So my point is that a lot of time the virtuosity of this passage will be enhanced if you focus on the musical aspect of it. That's number one. and it will technically actually be helpful to you to play more musically. Which is our main theme now, but in C minor. And then diminished 7. Reached G minor. Now we have again this play between two voices. So this bar is an example also in terms of bowing where I like to vary the first and the second time. So we have obviously this. I like to, the first time around, to do it to 2+1. And then to do it differently second time so that it's smoother. And so we have two different looks at the same motif. Back to the beginning. And now we go somewhere else. So we are technically in A flat major and then a diminished. And then we get one more taste of this beautiful sequence complicated passage. The ascension and the final cadence. And that was our Gigue. Not complicated, difficult, but not complicated. I have to confess to you, this is a piece, actually, even recently, my first concert after lockdown. And, you know, after not having played concert for a long time, I made the mistake of putting this 4/suite, and then I got tense in the Gigue. I was very unhappy with myself. But anyways, that's part of our musicians. Now, that's it. And instead of having an episode, now, wait, I will put this a bit higher. So, good. So I will share with you my thoughts, my guess about what we have done in these months, in exchanging with extraordinary guests on this show. And I think I will share at the end of it, after reading the individual thoughts, what individual thoughts I got from remembering these extraordinary encounters. I will share to you what I see as a general message from this in these times. So, if you remember, we started as it was a wonderful way to start with Anne-Theresa de Keersmaeker, the legendary choreographer, and obviously choreographer, dancing. It immediately, and I was very happy that we started with her because it immediately put at the center the dance. And I think we cannot enough, as performers, remember that these are suites, dance suites, and that how important it is to feel how the music, how the movements are dancing in order to construct our interpretation on this. So that was really very instructive. We went on with Pierre-Laurent Aimard in our second episode. Wonderful Pierre-Laurent Aimard, who told us his fascination for the way Bach presents the polyphony in the horizontality, and particularly he mentioned at length the Allemande from the Sixth Suite. Paolo Pandolfo was our next guest, an amazing viola da gamba player, and this gave us the perspective remember that these suites, they are an absolutely unique object in the world of the cello, but in terms of these dances, these different dances, and the idea of the suite, he helped us to contextualize, to remember what existed before in terms of suites, particularly for the viola da gamba, and I think context is important for us performers. Sonja Ziemenauer, as an agent who has been passionately involved in the music world for so long, and particularly with string quartets. And she reflected, first of all, she shared a personal memories. And I think this is also something we can, I think it's good, both for us players and listeners, to knowingly go into our very personal memories about some masterworks. I remember myself the first time I listened to the Beethoven concertos, for example, when I was a kid, and how had the feeling I was entering the Beethoven piano concertos, and how I had the feeling I was sucked in a world that was of extraordinary dimension. And so Sonja shared her memories, and she compared this solitude, in a way, the loneliness, in a way, of the player of the suites as opposed to a string quartet playing, and that was very interesting. Amandine Bayer, the wonderful violinist, she brought her extraordinary knowledge about ornamentation, about Baroque, about historically informed playing, ornamentation, and simply her enthusiasm and her generosity, which she has both in her playing and as a person. And our last guest for the first suite was Emmanuel André, who is the head of the Philharmonie in Paris. And I thought it was so interesting to hear how Emmanuel, he talked about Boulez, and so he talked about the Bach, the architect, and what role Bach can play, when you head one of the main concert halls in the world. Where do you place, and what central role Bach in general plays in your programming. And then we started the second suite, I would say, en fanfare, in great style, because our guest was my dear colleague and idol, Stephen Iselis. And it was a very, very beautiful episode where what I was fascinated by how Stephen both actually was very open and candid about his own vulnerability, about how he has grown to be a bit shy with the Bach suites. But also he shared with us some very interesting thoughts about how he sees it as in a way, a bit of a mystic work, the construction like a cross, the first two suites, the two suites in the middle, and the last two suites, comparing it with the passion, in a way. And one point also that I remember that I thought was very interesting was towards the end. He was talking to us cellists and saying, don't finger point in your interpretation. Get into the piece, make choices, but when you play, don't finger point. Don't say it's like this and it's like this. So we have to do all this process of getting into the details and be enthusiastic about them. But the moment we play, we have to let loose and let the music speak. Emmanuel Pahu, the emperor of the flute, was our next guest, and of course, probably because he plays the flute, but it was so interesting to hear him say something that I think is central, which is it's all about the breathing. It's all about the breathing. It's in the music. The playing is about the breathing. A phrase, how a phrase starts, and that's something that we string players need to remind ourselves, that our bow arm has to breathe in order for the music to fully live. Lambert Wilson, actor, was the next guest, and he's somebody who has a great spirituality, spiritual dimension, and it was beautiful to hear him speak about how the Bach cello suite uh, help us to just come to ourselves. So it's very moving, personal témoignage, statement. Then the jazz singer Camille Berthaud was our guest, and what I took from her intervention was this extraordinary. She's very young. She has this very intuitive way to relate to music, and very definitely uninhibited. That's the way she is. She's very, she's cash, and that was wonderful to just hear her tell her enthusiasm and say that for her it's not an intellectual process. It's about how this music just flows. Peter Wispelry, our great colleague, was our next guest, and if I had to remember one word about what he said and about what he projects in his relationship to the Bach suite, is invent. So he's somebody who is always inventing, always very curious, and that can be an inspiration for some of us. And then we finished the second suite with Eric Emmanuel Schmitt, the writer. So for those of you who don't speak French, I hope you have now practiced your French, because it was worth it. That was incredible. Eric Emmanuel talked about Bach in such about music. It was very interesting to hear a writer relate who listens a lot to music. His music plays a very important role in his life, and one of the things that I remember most, but everything he said was so interesting and so meaningful, but is that he was saying, as a writer himself, the importance of improvising in order to make his books, which are, I don't know if you read them, they are translated in all languages of the world. His books are so alive. You open, and then it's just like, ooh, there is all this life coming out of these pages. And he was explaining that the way he works most of the time is that first he will just, he takes the paper, a pen, and then he just writes, and he doesn't look back. He just let it come out, and then he will at some point come back and do corrections and make it better and all these things. But the flow of what he called the improvisation is very important to bring life into his writing, and to share a unique moment with his readers. And I think all of this, if you change readers for listeners, and writing a book for performing music, I think that's exactly something that we should endeavor, that we should try to do, that we reach a relationship to the music where we improvise in the moment we play it. I'm looking at the time. Okay, I still have a few minutes. That's good. In the Suite 3, Bernard Faucroul, organist, composer, festival director, talked to us about, but particularly as an organist, about polyphony and on the organ, which is of course, the instruments where you have even your feet to to produce a symphonic feeling, and how he was fascinated both as a composer and an organist of how Bach was developing polyphony in a horizontal way in the cello suites. And then I love all my guests, as you can see. I'm enthusiastic about all of them, but I will admit that the next episode, the Allemande of the third suite, was very, very special one for me, because it was with my last teacher, Timothy Eddy, amazing musician and pedagogue. And what he said that day was stellar. I remember the next day I was teaching, and my students who had watched the episode were almost breaking into tears from having somebody so dedicated, watching somebody like Tim so dedicated to making music alive but also meaningful. And basically, in 15 minutes, he put into words why and how music is a language, and how we as performers have this capacity and this duty to make the music speak. I really, if I had to ask you, to beg you to watch one of these past episodes, that's the one. Watch the episode Allemande of the Third Suite for what Timothy Eddy had to tell us about the art of performing and of making the music speak. Michael Jarrell was our next guest, wonderful composer, and it was wonderful to have his input as a composer, relating to Bach, the architect. Alexei Kosenko, flautist, talked to us about, it was the episode about the sarabande of the third suite, and so he brought his flute and he showed us different examples of different sarabandes, and that was very interesting to see, to contextualize these sarabandes that we have in the Bach suite within, basically in this case, the worlds of sarabandes. Émilie Delorme was the next guest. She's the director of the Conservatoire in Paris. And what I remember from her intervention was we started, in general, I've tried to avoid too much talking about what's happening to us at the moment with COVID, because this is not the point. We are talking about something which is timeless and we want to look ahead. So in her case, I thought it was interesting for her, who has been all her life interacting with young musicians when she was at the X Festival and now as a director of the Conservatoire in Paris. And what she said was the little tip she was giving to young musicians, and she said it's going to be super tough. It's really a big blow to us what's happening now, but there is, in this very difficult context, an opportunity for you young musicians to really redefine what music making is and what the music world can be. Martin Mostert was our last guest of the third suite. And I had invited Martin because he's a dear friend. He's a great cellist. He's the director of what I consider the greatest cello festival in the world, the Cello Biennale in Amsterdam. And I invited him also mainly because he was a student of Anna Bijlsma and a very close friend of Anna Bijlsma until his very last days, and until he passed away last year. And it was very interesting to have him speak and insist about the spirit of Anna Belsma, whom, as you know, is my sort of is my big reference in thinking of the Bach suites. I can already announce with great joy that one of my guests in the next episode is going to be Vera Beet, who is an amazing violinist, first of all, an amazing pedagogue, an amazing performer, and who was Anna's wife, Anna Belsma's wife, and she's going to be our guest, and so she will also um, uh, not only talk to us as an amazing performer of Baroque music and violinist, but also maybe she will give us even more insight about how Anna was living with the Bach suites. In this fourth suite that we just finished, oh my God, time passes. I thought I was going to be short, but I talked too much. Sorry, guys. My father, Jean-François, was my guest for the prelude of the fourth suite, and it was in French again. I apologize for those of you who don't speak French, but basically it was a more autobiographical episode where he talked about he talked about his passion and his wife's, my mother's passion for Bach and for the Bach cantatas and everything. And all of this is basically this passion that they had and he still has for this music has been the bedrock of that. That's the context in which I grew up and in which my passion for the Bach suites developed. Then Socrates Sinopoulos brought a wonderful perspective of world music to our suites, because as he's the player of Greek setar, of kemanche, well, the equivalent of the Turkish kemanche, and he played for us. You should watch this episode because he played for us something from actually, he's improvising most of the time and he's playing his own compositions. But in this case, he played a piece composed at the time of Bach by a composer whom he's pretty sure knew the music of Bach and was aware of it. And that's very, very interesting to have a music from the Eastern world. Already at that time, there was this exchange between these different culture. And by the way, sorry, I had a little blackout. So he plays, of course, the Greek lira, which is the equivalent of the Turkish kemençe. My apologies. Nicolas Alstedt, my wonderful colleague, was the guest for the courante of the fourth suite. And what I remember from his intervention is his endeavor for his research for authenticity and how he's making no compromise. And I was very moved when he said as a student, he never played the sixth suite because for him, he said he would wait until he has a piccolo cello to play the sixth suite, because for him, this is the instrument for which the suite was composed, and it did make sense to learn the suite on 4 strings. Then Alexandra Scheibler, director of the Bach Festival in Montreal, was my guest, and she told about her experience of what the Bach cello suite have meant with the different interpreters within her festival, her Bach festival. I had the great joy to be her first Bach cycle in her festival, and Yo-Yo Ma was there twice, and I think she's planning on having some more, and it was very interesting how she was relating to that. The last time was about the Bourrées, and Sascha Götzl delivered a very, very compelling statement about first of all what the arrival of the general bass in the Western music means, what it means in terms of how we have to refer to the general bass, to the bass line, which is something I've been talking a lot in these ateliers, in order to let the upper voice, to give it its freedom, to let it fly, to let it live, to let it fully come to life. And I also strongly recommend this episode with Sasha Götzel from 2 weeks ago. And here we are. We have done 24 episodes. Next episode will be in 2 weeks, and we have still 12 episodes to come. I look so much forward. I thank you for being there on this journey. It's so wonderful for me. It's so rewarding because it helps me also to reflect on these suites and on how we can interpret them and how they bring they what they give us, you know. And particularly in these times, to finish, my last word for today will be that what I've learned from all these amazing guests in this is that, you know, before the COVID crisis stroke, and it's such a big crisis, and it's such strong stroke and a strong blow, a strong hit that we got because obviously because we cannot give concerts, and concerts and sharing that's what music is about. So it is a very, very hard blow. Nevertheless, many people would say, and I agree, that before the COVID crisis, we were already talking about the fact that classical music was a bit in a crisis, in some kind of crisis, or at least in an existential questioning. And what this experience with all these amazing guests has helped me to remember, or to reconvince me, is something that I deeply think, which is that we as performers, and I'm talking now mainly to my friends performers out there, that when we go on stage, yes, there is all these, you know, we have to deliver. There is a score, there are notes, there is technical challenges on the cello, and we have to do this, to coordinate, to play in tune, to do all these things. But let's keep the eye on the ball, as they say, and remember that each note, through all these wonderful tips that these people gave us, that music is about speaking, about that we have to, beyond our performing, we have to come to the essential message, if I dare to say, that these masterworks, like the Bach suites or others, not only that they have this in them, but also that they need us performers to really deliver. I hope maybe in another episode I will try to express this in a clearer way. But yeah, let's bring the music even more to life in the post-COVID world. Thank you for listening. I look forward to seeing you very soon. It was wonderful to all these 24 episodes, and I look forward to the last third, to the last 12 episodes. Be well, stay healthy.